we'll shift gears a little bit to another great making the case for our Razorback football side of things. His coaching search still ongoing. I don't know if you guys knew about it. Still going, still happening. The new intel is out there. It's not. No one knows anything. But there's a lot of coaches that continue to go around. We've talked a lot about certain few of them, and some of them we've talked more about. But as we continue on, some of the names that get thrown around will be guys like Will Stein, the offensive coordinator of Oregon. This is not one that has any sort of connection, like, oh, his wife used to babysit John Tyson's kids or something stupid like that. It's just, hey, guys at Oregon, been successful, and he's also a name that's getting mentioned. And when we do our voting on InsideArkansas.com each and every week, I would say he's been in the top 5 for a bit, but normally he's like right there at 6 or 7, so still into the mix. And so from this perspective, I believe, guys, this is also the first coach that we've talked about that's not a current or former head coach. This is a coordinator. So if Arkansas was to hire or want to hire Will Stein, the offensive coordinator of Oregon, make the case as to why that would be a great hire for Arkansas.
Feels like he's probably at the top of the list of coordinators getting ready to make that jump. Here's my thought process, man. If you want to find the next Dan Lanning, maybe you should just take Dan Lanning's right-hand man. You know what I mean? That sounds like a pretty good idea to me. A revered offensive mind, young up-and-comer. It's a swing. You know what I mean? Like it comes with risk, obviously, but it also comes with, I think, the potential upside that could be program altering. I don't use that term lightly, but look at what those guys who have hit recent years that have made this type of jump, what that's done for those respective programs. So I think other guys are safer options, more proven, better resumes. You know what you're going to get, but I also think you also know some of the limitations there. And so there's an element of unknown, but with a guy like Stein, I think it excites me. Like it would be a fun brand of football, and he would need just what everybody else does. Cause that's the caveat, right? Of like, oh, you need the resources. You got to have this much NIL. He's got to have the support to go do this and that. And maybe he needs a little bit extra in that assistant or the staff pool because he's going to need to get some older guys around him with experience. Yeah, sure. That's going to be the case with so many of these dudes, but there's something about this that excites me. And so I don't know that he'd be number one on my board. Want you to swing for the fences or whatever, but I would low key be super excited about a guy like Will Stein.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about being forward thinking and doing something before it might be too late. Because think about it. If Will Stein, let's say Will Stein gets a job at, Texas Tech, just a random school. He becomes the head coach at Texas Tech. And then all of a sudden he goes 10-2 in the Big 12, 3 straight years. Well, then all of a sudden he's getting the Bama job. He's getting the LSU job. He's going to get a massive job, especially because at that point he'd be 40, 42, and it'd be like, okay, this guy's clearly the next big thing. Like Arkansas, there's a lot of guys that, were coordinators at one point that now Arkansas would have no chance at hiring. And I think, I'm not saying that Will Stein's going to be that, but I think there's something to that premise of trying to be forward thinking and getting a young, energetic guy who clearly knows something on the offensive side of the football. I'm going to make the case by simply looking at what would be the case against him. If you were going to look at Will Stein and you say, why would you not hire him? Well, he's, inexperienced. He hasn't been a head coach. Did you have something to say, John?
I was just going to say, I know why I wouldn't hire him.
Yeah, what would be the reason why you would not hire? What would be the biggest case you could make against him?
Because I'm older than him. And that makes me feel old.
No, that's
honestly what it would. That's my point, though. I agree with you, but it's like that would be the one.
100%. And and that's completely valid of like, oh yeah, this guy's never been a head coach at a high level before. Could he be a head coach at Arkansas? That's a valid question. I would just encourage some people to look at the top 25 teams in college football. And I'm gonna cut it off arbitrarily at 22. Of the top 22 teams in the rankings as of today, 14 of them currently have a head coach who made a direct jump from coordinator to head coach and had not been a head coach at a high major program before. Some of them had been head coaches at like high schools or whatever, but had never been a collegiate head coach, including the number 1 team in the country, Ohio State, who of course just promoted their OC. But Georgia, Oregon, Ole Miss, although Ole Miss is not necessarily that because Kiffin did not make a direct jump. But there's even a few other guys. There's 14 of them that made a direct jump, but there's also 5 or 6 like a Heupel, like a Kiffin, like a Lincoln Riley, who were high-level assistants that maybe had one head coaching job before. And so I would say it's not really that uncommon. In fact, not only not uncommon, it's maybe the most direct path to upgrading your program is finding one of these up-and-coming coordinators who is clearly on a trajectory to be a head coach. And I think there's something to that. I also think, man, if because everybody loves Jeff Traylor for whatever reason, and I'm sure there's some people who love Jeff Traylor and they say, well, I really am intrigued by Jeff Traylor, but for some reason, his first 3 years at UTSA were a lot better than his last 3 years. I don't know, just something happened after 2022 where they went from winning 11, 12 games a year. Now they're winning 7, 8 games a year. It's just maybe just one of those things. It's not one of those things. He had an offensive coordinator named Will Stein who was throwing the ball all over the country, leading the nation in total yards, total offense, all this. Now all of a sudden he doesn't have Will Stein, and he's still a good coach. He's still competent, still running the program, doing a good job. There was clearly some magic there that he lost. Oregon, I would also say, went from being one of those just solid, pretty good, 6, 7, 8 wins program, kind of recovering back. All of a sudden they have Will Stein, and now they are basically the best program on the West Coast, and taking over the Big Ten now. I think there's something to that. And so is he directly responsible for all of Oregon's success? Probably not. I look at the recruiting rankings. I see Oregon in the top 5, top 6 every single year. How responsible is he for that? I don't know. I genuinely don't know the answers to, but I'd be interested to hear from him of what lessons he learned from Traylor, learned from Dan Lanning, how much he's evolved as a recruiter. His offense clearly works at a very high level against the best of the best competition. He's done it with different quarterbacks, different wideouts, different everything. I think there's a lot to that. I think if you throw a boatload of money at a young guy like that and you can really get the state to get behind him, I think you could do a whole lot worse than Will Stein.
Yeah, for me, if you're going to hire a coordinator, he's my number one pick that I would want to hire. If you're going to go a coordinator route, yeah, and I mentioned his age. It's more of just me feeling old because it'd be like the head coach of Arkansas is younger than me. It just kind of hits a little bit different if that happened. But
makes you question a lot of life decisions.
Exactly. It's one thing to be older than the players, but when you become older than the coach, it's a weird deal. But I always am very fascinated by meteoric rises in coaching ranks, and he's had it. I know he's the quarterback at Louisville, so who knows? Maybe he'll go home to Louisville and be their coach one day. But he played from 2008 to 2012 at Louisville, and then he was a GA in 13. He was the quarterback coach in 2014. Then he became the quarterback coach at Texas in 2015, 16, 17. Then becomes the Lake Travis High School assistant head coach, offense coordinator, quarterback coach. Then goes to UTSA in 2020 and 2021 as the wide receiver coach. And then 2022 is then the co-OC at quarterback. And then 23, he goes to Oregon. So it's like pretty meteoric where he's all over the place. And I don't know, again, you could be a little bit weary of that, but I'm also like, there must be something about him that makes him really good to where he keeps getting these great opportunities.
100%. By the way, it was Charlie Strong that he played for at Louisville and then coached under at Louisville, then followed him to Texas, of course. And Charlie Strong, I know, was another guy that also had a meteoric rise or whatever. I think there's something to that. When he was at Lake Travis, by the way, he coached Garrett Wilson, who is now playing for the Jets and was like one of the best receiver in the country. And so he got a lot of credit for that in the moment. I think that's what got him these opportunities at UTSA and so on. Also, the guy who had his current job before him was Kenny Dillingham. And so, I don't know what his relationship is like with Kenny Dillingham or how close they are or if they keep in touch or whatever. But, I think there's some things you can learn from that guy. I think there's some things you can learn from Dan Lanning, who's clearly built one of the best programs in college football that he had a front row seat for. Even Charlie Strong, who I know didn't have the great coaching career we expected, that's a good coach to learn from. That's, and by the way, a defensive coach that he probably learned some program building techniques about. Jeff Traylor, who, of course, is a very respected guy in the state of Texas and high school, built a lot of great relationships. I just think there's a lot on Will Stein's very small resume that you look at and you're like, oh, I could see how that would lend itself to him being pretty good. And then he just has kind of advanced pretty quickly, but he's done a hell of a job literally everywhere he's gone.
What scares me about, if he's real high on your list and you want to get him, is every day I see Jeff Brom popping up on some of the lists for these big schools. And I know he's at his alma mater at Louisville, but money talks, man. And he's a hell of a coach. And if he got plucked, that just feels like the most obvious natural landing spot in the world for a guy like Stein. And he would kill it there and it would piss me off.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And by the way, if you guys just want to know what the Google AI said about him as an offensive coordinator and what his strengths and weaknesses are, I started finding this out, which I know how people feel about AI, but it is fascinating because they take a bunch of different information. So here are the offensive strengths of Will Stein, according to the AI. Elite production, which I guess we can definitely see as far as the numbers go. Quarterback development. Strategic simplicity, because it says that Stein simplifies the playbook to reduce decision-making time for players, which allows them to play faster and more confidently. Versatility, where a system blends spread and pro-style elements. Allowing for adaptability. Also key concepts where he chooses to use frequent RPOs and has a foundational element of crossing routes. And then also defensive deception. The offense uses elements like read options, stuff like that. Now his weaknesses, though, roster dependence. Says that he stated that he has to build his scheme around the strengths of players on the roster, which can shift from year to year for his offense identity. I don't necessarily see that as a weakness, but that's what it says. And then also
he's had 3 different quarterbacks. Like, it was like he made Bo Nix, which, by the way, Bo Nix has sucked at every level of football, high school, college, and NFL. Every single season Bo Nix has had, he has sucked, except for when he was with Will Stein. Dylan Gabriel was the guy after him. Now that freshman they have, Dante Moore, he's like the best freshman in the country. So, which, by the way, these are all super talented, highly recruited guys still.
Yeah. And then finally, over complexity. Because he says that Stein admitted that his offenses have sometimes been too complicated early in the season, which led to early struggles, but then adapted as time went on. So there you go. Pretty much his weaknesses are he adapts too well and he gets better during the season. So those are his weaknesses according to Google AI. But
my biggest weakness is that I just care too much.
Yes.
Too good of a leader.
Too good of a leader. Feel too good.
You know?
Yeah. It's So again, if there's a lot of different coaches that if Arkansas hired, I would be fine with. I'm definitely would be fine with the Will Stein. Again, he's a young pup. I didn't even realize too, not only did he play at Louisville, not only did he coach at Louisville, he was literally born in Louisville. Like that dude is Louisville through and through. So yeah, that would be if you hired him.
Papa John's.
Yeah, maybe we'll ask him if he gets a coach.
You just have Papa John's bag if you come to Arkansas, Will Stein.
Yeah. But that would be the thing of like, if that job opened up, wouldn't that be Arkansas's luck is like they get Will Stein in like year 2 or 3 or just year 1 or 2. He just explodes on the scene, like just working fools. And like you said, Curtis Braun gets fired and he goes to Louisville and you're like, great. Even when we had something good, we couldn't even keep it here because he had to go back. Of all the jobs, had to go to Louisville. So
what are the chances that Will Stein could talk Charlie Strong into being his defensive coordinator at Arkansas? Arkansas born and bred Charlie Strong, Batesville's own. What are the chances? He's currently the D-line coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He can't be having that much fun over there, right? You want to teach Vita Vea how to rush the passer, or you want to come build a great program at Arkansas? Your choice.
And hey, do you know where he's from? Charlie Strong, you know where he's from?
He's an Arkansas boy, bro. He's Arkansas. He's a hog, bro. He grew up with a red nose.
Yeah, that's right. Batesville's own. Him, Gage Wood, and Mark Martin. All just something about Batesville, man. Mark Martin, Gage Wood, and Charlie Strong. All from Batesville, man. So either way. But yeah, we'll continue on this series. There'll be some other names we throw around. There'll be other names that we won't even pay attention to because they're not even serious. So but it's always fun to talk about.
I don't think the chat is I don't think they're anti Will Stein or they're pro. I just don't think they care.
Yes, I know.
I don't think the audience cares about Will Stein. I don't think he moves the needle for people.
Yeah, I get it, but hey, it moves the needle for some people because y'all keep voting on him in the system that they're in the polling that we have. So